And thank you everyone who's joining us this morning. Yeah, so a while ago since we first planned this talk, and I think at that time the title was going to be "Can't Learn, Won't Learn, Don't Care," which is an area that I kind of cover. But I've changed it to the few matter too. It's a little bit of a response to sort of an attitude that I've been hearing quite a lot by by some of the people in the behaviour area, which is that the few shouldn't affect the rights of the many. And that's going to be the sort of focus of today, really, because I'm going to be talking a little bit about the issues around school exclusion. So as Andy said, I was a former head teacher. I've written a number of books. I'm interested, as you can tell, in a couple of areas there, which is to do with I started off in I suppose the EBD, which we'll come back to in a while. It used to be known as emotional behaviour difficulties, and there's a lot of different words we've had to do with that. And so, as you can see, I've been a special school head. I've worked in independent schools. I've worked in mainstream schools, and I'm interested in whole sort of areas. And I've got a new book out now, which is called "Supporting Behaviour in the Classroom." Excellent stocking filler, because that's all going on right now, isn't it? You've all got to do with that. And I suppose once upon a time we used to do, remember the live conferences we used to do? And we're saying today, it is it's a different medium. We're trying to, adapt, but I can't really see you right now. I can't interact with you in the same way. But those are some of the live courses I do, and I've done some online stuff. And there's particularly the one managing behaviour inducing school exclusions. That's just something I just produced, and there's 4 sessions in that. One's for senior leadership teams, one's for staff, and one for parents, and one for governors. So that's just a brand new course. And there's some other bits and pieces there as well that you can look up on. I'm not just interested in behaviour. I think anyone who works in this field, I think, should be looking at the 3 key areas, which are obviously learning, which is what we're here to do. I'm interested in some why people don't always learn in a traditional manner. And then also interaction with others. And, because this issue of peer-to-peer issues is something really important. And if they're not happy in work, there's lots of terms out there. Will be, there's an A to Z of SEN, and there's about 9 under A. I haven't got to the B's yet, but just seems to me that you've got traditional learners, ones that sort of move through the system in a sort of traditional manner, and you've got the non-traditional learners. And I suppose I'm kind of interested in the ones that aren't learning and how to support them. And it occurs to me that, you've got a lot of kids are playing test match cricket, they're playing the long game, doing it for those reasons. And you've got those that are 2020ers, and there's different rhythm to how you work with and support people who are, and it's a bit like in cricket, you've got some good test match players who can play that long game, and you've got those that can play the short game, different rhythm, how you bat, field and bowl. So that's really what I'm sort of interested in. So if you look at the issues of exclusions, you can see that the pattern isn't particularly promising. As you can see, back in 2010-11, we were sort of really going down to what was seen to be, I suppose, a level which was not, there's always going to be issues for exclusions, permanent exclusions. We've got to make schools safe. We've got to make them secure. We've got to make people feel as if they can thrive and not feel threatened. And, and I've been a head teacher, and I've excluded people as well for, issues to do sometimes with drugs and violence and, and abuse and things like that. And you've got to have that issue. But it just seems like the Every Child Matters approach has kind of like gone. And now it's kind of moved into this, the few shouldn't affect the rights of the many, and it's got to this kind of no tolerance approach and sweat the small stuff. And as you can see, that has led to particular increases in exclusion, permanent exclusion, particularly in secondary schools. I have to be said that special schools have been doing a much better job. It's kind of been sort of semi even in the primary. That's impermanent, and there's fixed term exclusions again, which we look at in terms of that particular approach, which again is going way up again in secondary and going down again in some areas in special. And it's getting to the point now where the language is changing as well. It's almost becoming so acceptable. In fact, people are talking about PEXs and FEXs. It's almost like another acronym, and that's just worrying. exclusions, call the PECs, and that just seems like, oh, it's just, well, it's kind of happening now. And when you look at it in terms of the sort of figures, you know, that's what we're looking at. And, you know, I'm not going to read them for you, but just to sort of make that point, you know, there's been a 36% increase in permanent exclusions in the last 4 years. And there's been a 44% increase in fixed term exclusions in the last 4 years. So the question is why? And the question is, to a certain extent, what are we going to, you know, do about it? And maybe there isn't anything we can do about it, but I think we can. And I think we have to be looking at things in a slightly different way. You've only got to look at some of the differences in places like Scotland up the road, where they, well, not up the road, is it? It's quite a bit up the road. And first of all, I'm in South London, so it's quite a long way up the road. But, you know, their approach is very different. You know, the culture is very different towards how they see behaviour. They do see it much more as a communication element. And I'm not saying, like I said before, it's always got to be some, it's a straightforward issue, this. But it's just something we need to be, I think, looking at, you know, to a certain extent, slightly differently. And again, you know, I am going to make this point, you know, Mr. Bennett is the behaviour czar. He does have this attitude that the few shouldn't affect the rights of the many, you know, no tolerance approach, and he influences, obviously, you know, people at quite a high level. And, you know, and the fact that he has this attitude towards that head teachers need to go and get themselves sort of like, you know, trained in how to deal with behaviour is, I think, quite ironic from someone who hasn't been a head teacher, who hasn't actually issued an exclusion, who's someone who I know came into teaching later. I've got no problem with the fact that people have done different things, you know, but, you know, a nightclub, you know, not the same sort of approach at all. And I think, you know, that this kind of attitude towards, you know, towards the few, not affecting the right, because the truth of the matter is, there's always the trickiest kid in the class, and if he's not there, then someone else becomes the trickiest kid in the class, and if he's not there, someone else will become, and if you kept on going in that particular area, you just be left with yourself. So, you know, and then we've been looking at this in other ways too. I mean, it really hit the headlines last year. I think the papers got hold of the issue, and as a response to that, there was quite a lot of reviews taking place. And, you know, this one here was I think quite useful in terms of how it looked at some of the ways in which we were looking at things. And, you know, and so it's not to say that people aren't looking at this quite seriously, but as you can see, what's happening at the moment, you know, the trend is only going in one direction. And that obviously then this came, and then all of a sudden, of course, the sort of, I suppose the focus was very much on health and safety, which it should be, and that's quite right to do that. But the issue of health and safety and making sure people are secure does come with some risk, particularly. And Harry Daniels and Ian Thompson were basically writing about this summer, and they were writing about the fact that, you know, some of the changes would pose some risks. It would pose some challenges for schools dealing with that area, and they made the point that, you know, it could well be very likely that, you know, the tolerance towards some of these issues, you know, particularly for students who are, what can I say, non-premeditated but impulsive reactions. And I would say that, wouldn't I? Because my area of interest would probably be treated in a far less tolerant way. And, you know, and I get that as well, because obviously we need to protect everyone as best we can, and we need to adjust and do the things. Although it does appear to me that in some schools, the changes that we've made in particular cases have actually probably benefited certain students who may have been at risk in a, you know, prior to that. So, you know, there's been some individuals for whom the sort of like the bubble has worked very well, as opposed to sort of the interaction that you might have had. And you could argue to a certain extent that all schools, you know, have been sort of specialist schools, if you like, in the last sort of like 6, 7, 8 months, because of the reaction and the, you know, the ways in which they've adjusted their approaches. If you look at, and this is what I'm really going with this, I think, you look at the characteristics in terms of exclusions. As you can see, majority are in secondary. There's, you know, there's no real surprise in that. You can see the area really, I think, where we've got the real issue is the age 14. And I think a lot of students do come from primary students with some of the maybe some of the issues of learning and behavior maybe, you know, not really, a little bit submerged, and then the first year they sort of like they're trying to hang in there. And I do think literacy is up there. I think if they're not reading in the first year, they try and get through it. In the second year, they think, I can't do this, and you know, and they start reacting in a way. And in fact, some students think, you know, the best I can be is the worst I can be. It's the best I can be. They start feeling that's the only way in which they can express themselves. And I'm not justifying that. I'm just saying that that seems to be the trend. And you can see who's more at risk, boys and girls, although that is narrowing. I think what I'm particularly interested in is the main reason for exclusion, which is this term called persistent disruptive behavior, or PDB. It's the headline term every year, both for fixed and for permanent. And, you know, we look at it each year and we say, oh, that's the main reason, but we don't seem to really be doing anything differently about it. And if you take the point that, you know, the main reason for permanent exclusion is persistent disruptive behavior, you've got to have an awful lot of them before you can be permanently excluded. And it just seems to me that the second or third fixed term exclusion, or, you know, or as work, then I can't see. I know that, you know, it's frustrating, and it is draining. I better answers to this than just to carry on in this upward trend. And I do work in this area of SEN, and if I was going to tell you that can't learn, won't learn, don't care talk, the can't learn really for me were the students with ADHD type traits. And it's not about labels, it's about traits, but they are generally non-premeditated, because the core issue for ADHD is not hyperactivity, it's impulsivity. The first time they think about it, they've already done it. But generally speaking, their behavior is non-premeditated, you know, and that's, I think, does link into a lot of that description in PDB. You do have a term out there which is called conduct disorder, which is would be the don't care ones in that particular talk, and those are the ones who know what they're doing and do it anyway. They are premeditated. In fact, they're not always easy to catch in the school environment. They're sometimes difficult because they are, you know, they're good at what they do. They are more the sort of leaders of things than the followers. And then you've got the ones in the middle who you might, well, I sometimes describe as the sort of that they, you know, they won't learn but might. But basically there's a term for that, which is oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, which is a weak term, but it's a term we use to make the discrimination between maybe the sort of more premeditated. They're a bit in the middle. And you know, they are actually, they're very good at what they do. You know, they're very good at arguing, they're very good at frustrating, they're not easy to like. You know, they are, by the way, just to give you a route for the future, the defence lawyers of the future, or Ryanair cabin crew. Everyone's got a skill. But what I'm basically saying is that a lot of the stuff starts with low-level things that escalates, and it's and you know, a lot of it starts off with where's your pen. You know, a student should not be excluded from a school for not having a pen. You know, it's not the pen that is the exclusion, it's the argument that leads to where is your pen. So, you know, for me, it's that low-level stuff, which I think it is preventable. I read an article recently which is called "Fairness Isn't Giving them what they need." It's a lot about pens. That's what it is. Okay, so here's how I see it. Here's you, and here's you taking your children or the students through the journey of the school environment, and taking them onto success in terms of the next steps in the future, in terms of going to college or university or to the workplace. But there'll be traps and tribulations on the way. And on the journey, you will face challenges like we all face. And, you know, there will be these challenges which we will have to overcome. But unless we do a better job, unless we try and sort of change the tide, so to speak, and reduce this up is I want you to know that no ducklings were actually harmed in this presentation, but I want you to join me in a mission, and I do this wherever I go, particularly, I want you to join me in a mission to say on the count of three, these four words. I want you to say loudly and proudly, wherever you in South London, no duckling. Thought were beneficial some years ago in 2014, although it hasn't really shown the trend, and we started to change the way we call behavior. We started to call less about behavior and more about the causes of behavior. And we started looking at that. We started looking at terms. And I said before, it's not about terms, it's more about traits. But if we understand the traits, then surely we must be able to sort of, have a better understanding about how to meet them. And when it comes down to it, we were talking about mental health, and that was important, wasn't it? It was important to actually, in fact, I believe before this, they were very hard. They didn't actually want to put the M and the H together. They was going to be social, mental, and emotional health, but they actually put the mental health together. I think they thought it might be a tsunami of it all. And to a certain extent, there is, isn't there? And I think we need to get upstream with it, and we need to be looking at it, and we need to be looking at the risk factors, and we need to be looking at the numbers. And we know the numbers are going to be high. We know they're going to be high, but we've got to be looking at how we're going to meet them. In issues in children are important to us to understand, and there are some neurological differences. As I said before, we've got those who are the 2020 players, you've got those who are test match cricketers. Temperament, is something which I've worked on quite a lot myself in terms of families, and I work with schools, and we do get some kids who are a bit half empty, and it's not just about the nurture, it's to a certain extent a little bit of nature. And I'm a dad of twins, and I've got twin boys who are now 21, and I can tell you one is very half full and the other one is not, and they came that way. I think the area I'm interested in is obviously this area of neurodiversity, and I want to make the point, it is less about labels, it is more about traits. And I know different people have different attitudes about whether it's attachment or whether it's, so whether it's nurture or is nature. The truth of the matter is it's usually a combination of both, and that's particularly true of ADHD, actually, where you've got a child with traits and he's got parents who've got the traits. So he's not just working with the child, you're working with the family, and that's just something that there is some data on. In the family, of course, I've made that point. In fact, in the US, in some families now, they will not assess children in certain states in the US who have ADHD till they've assessed the parents. And guess who's being offered medication? It's the parents. And, they're being more structured on behalf of their children. It's not a bad idea, really, but we're not in that cycle. The community obviously plays a major factor. But the other one they added in this report, which is interesting, was issues in school. We've always had the individual, we've always had the parents, but it was in school. And it's interesting for this because the second main reason for permanent exclusion in secondary schools is actually assault of a pupil on another pupil. Now, those things happen for lots of reasons, but in my opinion, a lot of that is to do with bullying. It is to do with actually students who are impulsive, reacting in a way which leads to that. And essentially, a lot of it is about the students themselves not understanding other students' neurodiversity. And that's something I do now. When I go to schools, if I do insets or twilights, remember twilights, end of the day? I would go in and do something with the students themselves, because they're all up for diversity. They all get it in someone who is annoying and is kicking them at the back or is nudging them all the time or shouts out in class. They don't get it. They don't understand it. And the issue is that once they sort of talk about, you break it down, talk about diversity in terms of how the brain works and how you might react to things, they do look at things differently, and you do get a more kind of holistic bystander, proactive bystander approach. Because in any bullying program, by the way, it's not, you've got to deal with the bully, obviously, or the bullying behavior. You've got to deal with the victim, because otherwise they become a victim someone else. But it's the bystanders that hold the key. So you picture the bystanders. There is no magic formula. I've tried over the years to come up with approaches which I think help people. This is something I've been working on for a while. We call it SF3R. It's not magic. I wish it, you know, I can't just sprinkle it and hope it all works. But there are approaches, I think, that can help. We do need structure. We do need leadership. We do need to lead from the top. We do need to have a view that, you know, the few are important. You know, they're all important. Every child is important. We know that to be the case. And, you know, we can't have this issue where, you know, some are seen as just getting out because they help the others. Everyone's got the right to learn. I get that. Inclusion is everyone has the right to learn. And I completely concur with that. But we've got to also, you know, be having sort of different approaches for those students who have more difficult ways of learning. So I think it is about that. Every school I go to, you've got a third of staff who get the quirky kids. You've got a third of staff who probably don't really want to work with quirky, and then you've got the ones in the middle who are kind of looking for some direction. And if the senior leadership says it, then you get your middle third, you know, and sometimes then you get the others hopefully on the way. So it is about those sort of things. It is about getting, you know, training staff, if you like, to actually, you know, react to situations, not just telling kids what to do. You've got to train the staff in order to help them do that. Things like pens, honestly. For me, it's not about behavior. It's always been about mood. It's about management of mood. 3 moods: yours, theirs, and the others. I've explained that more if I had more time with you today. I mean, right now, I hope your mood's okay. I know I'm talking about some stuff which you might not agree on. And actually, I know anyway, deep down, you're not even looking at me anymore. You're looking at behind me, aren't you? You're looking at my bookshelf. You're looking at the stuff I've got on there. Oh yeah, I got one of these. This is a good one. This is a worry eater. Yeah, this is worry. What you do with this is you get your stuff. I got this from a show, and you get bits of, you know, you get things and you put them in there and you put them there. See, what I do is I put any issues that I have a problem with, I put them in there. Usually my bills, actually, stick them in there and then just throw it away, and it's all gone. It's all gone. It's really good. So here's my inclusion slide, by the way. Would you like that one? See, what I'm saying is that everyone can be involved in the group sometimes. Why can't the fox be with the hounds if they're having a video? But sometimes some situations will put more stresses on the group. You know, now, do you think the fox is going to enjoy PE with the hounds? Probably not. Now, I'm not saying that certain students shouldn't do PE, but I am saying that certain students have different rhythms of how they learn, and it might well be in the afternoon, if they get through the morning, there's a different way to support them, and maybe a workstation with a headset on in a room might actually be just an option. You're doing it now, probably, you know, and we've done it before in certain cases, and there's other ways of doing it now again. So inclusion is, you know, is not about everyone being in the same place all the time. It's about them being in the same place some of the time and doing things differently. See, flexibility does not contradict structure. People think it does. It complements structure. You know, both things can work together. It's just about sometimes there's going to be some you know, not having a pen is not a crime against humanity. And there's other things we could talk about on there. You can't get your structure and flexibility unless you've got their trust, and that's through rapport. So you've got to get their trust, and that is about communication. It is about having some practical strategies. It is about giving them feedback when they get it right and when they get it wrong. And we've got to help students make choices, because in the end of the day, it's down to them, you know. And I was very clear on this, you know, ADHD can't hit Jack, you know, Jim hit Jack. Jim made the choice, or maybe didn't make a very good choice. You want to help him make a different choice. And if parents come to me with that attitude that he's got this, so it allows them to do that, I say, no, you know, we're going to help him make different choices. That's what a reasonable adjustment or a reasonable endeavor might be. Relationships sells itself, really. It's not just about us and them, it's about them and them. I think I made that point quite clear. And then, and it's resilience at the end to sort of try and get them to sort of take the stable to be more independent, to make those better choices on a more regular basis. And, you know, behavior is a message, but, you know, as I said before, we've got to help people make the right choices, but we're good to give them the opportunity to make those choices. And if they're going to make the wrong choices, we can't just be giving them the same diet and what we did before and hoping it's going to change stuff. So there's no magic formula. I thought, there you go, as a cat, no reason for that. Again, just thought you might be drifting off, and I have to keep an eye on your attention. Obviously, that's what I tend to do. You know, I would do the Stroop test with you if we'd be live. So don't want anyone being bored out there. So that's just to get you back, really. So the questions to address for me are these. What does persistent disruptive behavior actually mean? We can't just be, it's funny, you know, people say to me, does ADHD really exist? And I have to say, well, I don't know, I hope it does. I've written 10 books on the blooming thing. But right now, it might be the best way of describing a group of traits or symptoms that can't be better described by anything else. But for those people that say to me that, you know, I don't know if it does or not, but I think it might be the best way, as I say, of describing a group of can be better than anything else. But I can tell you what doesn't exist, PDB, as a term. It's just a description of what and why are we doing it. And I think we've got to be asking ourselves, why do we carry on doing it? You know, to get 45 days of this, to do that, you know, and it's usually 3 days, 4 days, how many days to get to this point? I don't know. And then what can we do about it? You know, that's going to be crucial as well. You can call it, you know, but what we'll do about it. But it occurs to me, you can't keep doing the same thing. If you do the same thing and get the same response, that's the issue. I don't know if you've seen this. Here's a truck. The reason the truck is here is because a car has fallen into the water. So a truck comes along, gets the car out of the water. But the situation's about to become more complex because now you've got a car in the water and you've got the truck in the water. This is not good, right? Okay. So the solution to the problem is to bring along a green truck. That's what we're going to do. And the green truck's a bigger green truck. And it's going to get the car out. Gets the car out quite successfully in the end. So not too much damage there. The bonnet is a bit damaged, but, you know, water, you imagine. And now it's going to have a go at getting out the red truck, and that's not working in. So now you've got a red truck in the water, you've got a green truck in the water. What's the solution to our problem? Well, obviously we're going to bring along a blue truck, aren't we? Really, because we do the same thing, you know. So that's how it occurs to me. So for me, we've got to be doing these things. We've got to be, first of all, considering what does the term mean? What is it telling us? What is the message behind it? And I think you may well find there's a lot of undetected trace. Not the only reason, there's other reasons there as well. I think we've got to be really saying after the second fixed term exclusion, we've got to be doing some kind of screening or some analysis of why it's happening, because if the second doesn't work, I can guarantee you the third, fourth, fifth and sixth aren't going to work. And then we need to help staff to actually work students who are at risk. And I have this approach, SF3R, other people will have ones too. And that's what I think. And it's not really a formula, it's an approach. And, you know, and all approaches need to be, you know, developed, delivered, implemented and supported. And that's how I see it. So all I want to say is thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of the day. And here, by the way, is those ducks. I know you're worried about the ducks, so there you go. What we're trying to do is help the ducks get over the bridge or over over the hill to the next place. And that's our job. And if you really want to know, this is the whole SEN spectrum in a slide. You see the one at the back there at the far left, that's the one with ADHD, as you can see. See the one second in line, that's the one with ASD, it's my spot on the snow. You see the one there, second to the back on the left? That one there, oppositional defiant disorder. I ain't standing in that line and you can't make me. And you can't make him, you can just suggest that standing in line is useful. You've got to get their trust before you can start to get the S and Fs to work for you. So thank you for listening. I've got to just to appreciate the sponsors here today, and thank you to them for helping us to put this on. That's a couple of slides on their behalf. So thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the day. The slides will be going through to you. My email is my website is www.fintanoregan.com. My email is fjmoregan@aol.com. So thank you for listening and have a good day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Finn.